Once again, good morning, and we would like to invite everybody to take your seats, find your seats, and we'll be beginning our program. Good morning, everyone. My name is Dr. Karen Remo, the CEO and co-founder of New Perspective Media Group and the publisher of the Filipino Times. And it's my pleasure to be your host for today's Philippine Country Business Briefing. Welcome to Dubai. This is a momentous gathering of the Philippines and the UAE's decision makers and business leaders as we present the opportunities that are now available in the Philippines in 2022 and beyond. We will be exploring areas of collaboration and cooperation between the two countries in the sectors of energy, infrastructure, agriculture, investments, trade, and labor. But before we begin, we would like to have this opportunity to thank all our dignitaries from the Philippines and the UAE who have all graced us with their presence here today. We have our delegation from the Philippines, headed by Philippines Minister of Trade and Industry and Commissioner General of the Philippines Pavilion at Expo 2020 Dubai, Secretary Ramon Lopez. Philippines Minister of Agriculture, Secretary Dr. William Da. Philippines Minister of Energy, Secretary Alfonso Cusi. Philippines Minister of Labor, Secretary Silvestre Bello III. Philippines de facto Minister of Public Works and Highways, Acting Secretary Roger Mercado. We also have our Philippine Diplomatic Corps here in the UAE, headed by Philippine Ambassador to the UAE, Her Excellency Jocelyn Quintana. Philippine Consul General to Dubai, Honorable Renato Dueñas III, Jr. I mean, one more generation. And our key business partners in the UAE, including UAE's Minister of Industry and Advanced Technology and Abu Dhabi National Oil Company Chief Executive Officer, His Excellency Sultan Al Jaber. To formally begin our country business briefing, we'd like to invite to the stage Consul General Renato Dueñas to deliver the opening remarks of the Philippine Ambassador to the UAE, Her Excellency Jocelyn Quintana.
The message of Her Excellency Jocelyn Quintana, Philippine Ambassador to the UAE. Honorable Secretary Ramon Lopez, Honorable Secretary William Dar, Honorable Secretary Silvestre Bello III, Honorable Acting Secretary Roger Mercado, Honorable Senator Aquilino Coco Pimentel III, Honorable Representative Christopher de Venecia, Honorable Representative Stella Quimo, and Honorable Representative Julian Baronda, esteemed colleagues in the government, Mr. Hassan Al-Hashmi, Vice President for International Affairs of the Dubai Chamber of Commerce and Industries, members of the business community in the United Arab Emirates, distinguished guests, good morning. It is with great pleasure that I welcome you in today's country business briefing in line with the Philippines National Day celebration and the historic Expo 2020 in Dubai. Historic not only in the sense that it is the first Expo to be held in the Middle East, Africa, and South Asia, but most notably for its emergence against the backdrop of a global pandemic that impacted economies worldwide. This year's Expo is not just a celebration of innovation, culture, and festivities, but a testament of resilience as the world adapts to the new normal. Indeed, life must go on, and therefore, business must continue as usual. The Philippines' participation in Expo 2020 aims to demonstrate the same resilience as we share to the world what the country has to offer from its history, culture, human and natural resources. The Philippines remains to be one of the top performing economies in the Asia-Pacific region, and its outlook is positive. In spite of business disruptions due to the pandemic and natural calamities, the Philippine economy grew by 5.6% in 2021, beating market expectations and prompting the government to maintain a return to pre-pandemic levels this year. Private consumption recovered by 4.2% from the 7.9% drop in 2020, an indication of returning consumer confidence as a result of relaxed quarantine restrictions and the accelerated vaccination program. Government expenditure also expanded by 7%. We are delighted by your interest to participate in today's briefing, where we will hear from no less than our esteemed ministers who flew in all the way from the Philippines to discuss the business climate and the benefits of doing business in the Philippines, as well as the export and investment opportunities on agriculture, infrastructure, public-private partnerships, and energy sectors. We hope that as you learn about the economic opportunities aimed towards the country's growth and recovery, you will be encouraged to invest in the Philippines to grow and expand your businesses. Thank you very much, and we hope you will join us in making it happen in the Philippines. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Kon Junjun. Thank you very much, Ambassador Quintana, for your inspiring remarks. Indeed, the Philippines has actually bested expectations, and we are Asia's next tiger economy. So the Philippines sees the UAE as one of its most important markets when it comes to trade, not only in the Middle East, but in the world. To expound more on this kind of significance, we're very delighted to hear from a keynote speaker in today's event from the Philippines Minister of Trade and Industry, Secretary Ramon Lopez.
Thank you very much, Karen. To our partners, fellow participants, a good day to all. And welcome to our country business briefing as part of the Philippine National Day celebration. We are fortunate to be joined also by our key partners in promoting the Philippines as a country of destination for your investments. And let me acknowledge all our partners who are with us this morning. The Head of International Relations of the Dubai Chamber, Mr. Hassan Al-Hashemi. Thank you very much for really joining us. You have been our partner for the past period, past years, and we even joined the Dubai Business Forum a few months ago, and we're glad to have you here this morning. Our Secretary of Agriculture, Secretary William Dar, Secretary Roger Mercado of the Department of Public Works and Highways, my partner, Secretary Silvestre Bello III of the Department of Labor, and your contingent. I saw all the heads, the administrators of your various agencies, attached agencies. Secretary Martin Andanard, the head of the Presidential Communications Operations Office. Of course, thank you to Consul General Renato Dueñas and representative, of course, the Ambassador Quintana. We have here Congresswoman Stella Kimbo, also our partner also from the creative industry champion, Congressman Toff de Venecia. Congresswoman Julian Baronda. Thank you for joining us, ma'am. From the Department of Energy, I don't know if USEC or Undersecretary Jess Posadas is already here. Okay. We also have representatives from various agencies. I can see Director General Plaza, you're behind there. You should be up here. Our Philippine Ecozone Authority and her team, they're with us. Fellow, of course, the Director General of IPO, Intellectual Property Office, Attorney Roel Barba, our Undersecretaries, Boy Vismonte and Gani Makatoman, and basically a full force, full support from the Philippine contingent. Fellow officials from government, esteemed members of the Philippine delegation and the UAE and Middle Eastern business community. So please allow me to present the Philippines. If you're looking for if you're looking for upsides in your business portfolio and expanded source of growth in the Southeast Asian region, I will provide the latest updates on the Philippine investment climate and trade opportunities in our country. Let me start with a brief background on our economic recovery from the pandemic and the various industries to consider for investments. Prior to the COVID-19 pandemic, the Philippines boasted of a very strong economic fundamentals, growing at an average of 6.6% over the period of 2016 to 2019. That's the start of the President Rodrigo Roa Duterte's administration. So an average of 6.6%. So much so that we were the second fastest growing economy in Asia. So in 2019, our per capita GDP was already up at $3,500 US, and we were already projecting to breach the $4,000 mark on a per capita income and become an upper middle income country by 2020 if COVID-19 had not happened. So fast forward to the current period, as the Philippines learned to manage the COVID-19 virus, reflected by cases subsequently decreasing, and with the strengthened vaccination rollout, we're able to gradually and safely reopen the economy. The recent cases of COVID-19 have also become milder and asymptomatic, just like in many other countries, because our government also has elevated the vaccination rate in the country, which helped increase the immunity of the population. And of course, we thank the UAE government for helping in the process with your donation also of vaccines to the Philippines. We have allowed greater mobility, shortened and even removed the quarantine requirements for cross-border travel. We will only now require self-monitoring. Fully vaccinated individuals from 157 visa-free countries, including the UAE, can enjoy quarantine-free travel to the Philippines for 30 days. You'll only need to present a negative RT-PCR test taken within 48 hours prior to the date and time of departure, and have a return ticket and insurance cover of $35,000. Again, it's not the cost, it's the cover. No? The cost is much, much lower. I think just about 1,000 pesos. Our management of the pandemic has protected many Filipino lives relative to other more advanced countries, which are still experiencing high level of surge as of now. This reopening of our economy has immediately translated to recovery in all the economic data. The Philippine GDP posted a growth rate back to where we were prior to the pandemic, in fact, even much stronger. So the GDP posted a growth of 7.7% in the fourth quarter of 2021. It was an improvement from the 7.1% in the third quarter of last year. So we were already trending again a high single-digit growth. So that closed the year with a 5.6% growth rate for the full year. And that is above the 5% expectation of GDP growth. And this growth rate is also among the highest GDP growth rates in ASEAN and the East Asian region. On the production side, the industry sector expanded by 8.2%, while the services sector grew by 5.3%. And on the expenditure side, primarily driven by household consumption, which grew by 7.5% and accounted for 5.2% percentage points of overall GDP growth. This strong rebound points to an improving consumer confidence. And for 2022, our target for GDP growth is, again, 6 to 7%, which means we can easily be back on track to our 2019 pre-pandemic GDP level of 19.3 trillion pesos this year, as we just need actually a minimum growth of 4.8% growth to restore to the 2019 pre-pandemic levels. Okay. On another note, the latest report of the IHS market, which is the Philippine, which is the Product Purchase Managers Index, or PMI index. So the PMI index has reported 51.8 index in December. And as you would know, any number above 50 would mean growth in the manufacturing sector. Okay. So we ranked third in ASEAN as of December, after Indonesia and Malaysia. The PMI managed to hold on to a 50 level. As mentioned, it still reflects growth. And that was in January, and that was because of the resurgence of Omicron, the Omicron variant, especially for the first 2 to 3 weeks of January. And that led to some moderate lockdowns as well. But the cases have started to go down already. So we have overcome that Omicron surge. And now we're down, we even reach around 3,000 from what used to be about 30,000 cases a day. We're now down to 3,000. I think yesterday we hit 4,000. So we are already in that vicinity. Meanwhile, our merchandise exports, two sectors actually have really recovered, even much stronger than the pre-pandemic. The export sector and the foreign direct investments. The export sector closed last year with a 14.5% growth, with the value reaching $74.6 million based on preliminary data of the Philippine Statistics Authority. And this is higher, 14.5% higher than 2020, and also 7% higher than the pre-pandemic average. That means the 2017 to 2019 period. So notably also, 27 exported commodity groups covering 87% of total exports have already breached pre-pandemic export levels. So it's stronger already than the pre-pandemic level. Other good news is, of course, the investment side. Foreign investors continue to stand by the Philippines and invest in mid to long-term strategic projects, even in the middle of the health crisis. So much so that our central bank reported a almost 99% year-on-year increase in FDI net inflows in October of 2021. So that's about $855 million from the $430 million inflow of the same month in the previous year. So on the number here, January to October, $8.14 billion. And it's higher by 48% than the $5.5 billion for the same period. And the good news, just this morning, before coming over here, and of course, Manila is advanced in terms of the time. So as of 11 a.m. in Manila, actually, they just came out with a new FDI, Foreign Direct Investment Report, that showed an even stronger growth from January to November. So from that 48% I reported earlier, they even reported now a 52% growth, or a $9.2 billion level of FDI from $6 billion investment in 2020. Equity capital placements were sourced mainly from Singapore, Japan, US, and Netherlands, and those were channeled mainly to manufacturing, electricity, gas, steam and air conditioning, financial and insurance, and real estate industries. And some game-changer developments I can report to you, referring to the easing of foreign equity restrictions. Again, all this will definitely attract more foreign equity capital, foreign investments into the country. So the game changer recently passed by both houses of Congress is the amended Public Service Act. Once President Rodrigo Duterte signs the bill into a law, the foreign equity restrictions in key sectors will be eased from a maximum of 40% to 100% foreign equity that will be allowed. No? So this shall attract more global players that will modernize several sectors, such as in the telecom, telecommunications, shipping, air carriers, railways, and subways. Similarly, there will be increased competition in terms of services, products, which will generate competitive pricing to the benefit of the consumers. So once again, we thank our Congress, our Senate for really passing this. I think that the last law on foreign service was 85 years ago. So it's just really a game changer in liberalizing all these sectors. Similarly, the amended Retail Trade Liberalization Act and the Foreign Investment Act are expected to establish reforms to remove barriers for foreign investment entry. Soon, there will be lower capital requirement for foreign investors in retail trade from a previous investment requirement of $2.5 million. Now it is down to just $500,000. And of course, in the Senate, Senator Pimentel, who should be joining us later, Congresswoman Stella Kimbo, again, part of the delegation here, a strong advocate. And we thank also the respective chairs of the committees in the House and Senate, Congresswoman Sharon Garin and Senator Pimentel and Senator Grace Poe. In view of this, the Philippines can also be a second home for UAE startup firms involved in advanced technology with capital requirement of only $100,000 and employing even only 15 employees from the local workforce. Additionally, the Philippines has preferential trade access in major markets through our free trade agreements. We continue to benefit from the European Union's Generalized Scheme of Preferences, or what is more popularly known as the GSP+, the only nation in ASEAN to do so. Likewise, we are currently working to push for more products to be included in the talks on the GSP with the US, the United States, which is now under discussion for renewal. These add to the value of making Philippines as a manufacturing location for your products, as products manufactured in the country can enter both the US and EU GSP market at zero duty. And of course, moreover, the Philippines is also part of the Regional Comprehensive Economic Partnership, or otherwise known as RCEP, which is intended to create in the region more business-friendly environment. RCEP will likewise encourage closer integration of economies and provide a more stable and predictable a rules-based system on trade. And amidst the pandemic, the Philippines has also been proactive in enhancing strategic, bilateral, and regional relations with other trade partners. For example, we're continuing the Philippine-EU FTA monitoring missions, and also the recent conclusion of the negotiation of the Philippine-South Korea FTA. Incidentally, we have been working on finalizing the Investment Promotion and Protection Agreement, the IPPA, between the Philippines and UAE. And this afternoon, we shall be signing that IPPA, or that agreement. And this afternoon, we shall also launch the discussion on the Comprehensive Economic Partnership Agreement. The UAE, our UAE counterparts refer to it as CEPA, but it is actually another form of FTA between Philippines and the UAE. So we hope that together with the Ministry of Economy of UAE, we can further strengthen the kind of business investment and trade relationship that we have between Philippines and UAE. In order to make the investment climate in the Philippines significantly more attractive, we have also passed last year the CREATE Act, or the Corporate Recovery for Enterprises and Tax Incentives. This will reduce the corporate income tax rate, or has reduced the corporate income tax rate from 30% to 25%. for large companies and down to 20% even for the micro SMEs. We want to attract higher level of technology in the industry sectors, such as in the electronics, aerospace, and automotive. So that's the reason why we are giving more favorable terms and incentives to those industries with high technology and entice more FDIs in that particular field. Guided by our inclusive, innovative industrialization framework, the Strategic Investment Priorities Plan under CREATE identifies industries for the grant of incentives to attract high-value, modern, and sustainable high-technology projects that will strengthen our participation in the global value chain, create more jobs, and further sharpen the Philippines' competitiveness in the global market. The length of incentives that would be offered to corporations or investors will depend on the tier classification based on their levels of technology and location, especially those far from the urban centers. So as you move to the right to Tier 3, there'll be a longer set of income tax holidays, like from 4 years to 7 years of ITH, and an extended incentive of special corporate income tax rate for 10 years for exporters and 5 years for those serving the domestic market. And here are sample investment activities and their tier classification. So now, allow me please to discuss briefly our updated priority industries for domestic and export market. First is on the IT BPM sector, and the Philippines is well known for this sector. With a 13% share of the global market in 2019 and 15% in 2020, the Philippines IT BPM sector is the second largest in the world. During the pandemic, this is one sector that had no layoffs, but instead continued to hire personnel. The industry is also expected to grow 8%, and export revenue is expected to hit $28 billion this year. So this is almost equivalent to the OFW level of remittances, which is a little over $30 billion per year. We have the edge when it comes to voice-related services, as well as now a growing subsector, the non-voice, high shared service support. Meanwhile, the Philippine electronics industry hosts about 500 global semiconductors and electronics companies. The industry is characteristically export-oriented, accounting for 62% of total Philippine exports. It has posted fast growth, hitting double-digit growth at times. I think the last growth was 14, or about 14% growth. And the Philippines is already an indispensable part of the electronics global value chain and is a center of excellence for electronic manufacturing services. We are particularly strong in the test, the packaging, and assembly of semiconductors. What's more, we are ready to become the home of competitive integrated circuits, or IC, design companies, serving customers worldwide, and thanks to our growing pool of IC design engineers. Our country's digital landscape makes it an ideal setting to support the growth of hyperscalers. Last year, we launched a campaign highlighting Philippines as the next strategic hyperscaler hub in the Asia-Pacific region. With the continuous improvement on the country's economy, coupled by our relevant legislations, as mentioned earlier, the promising economic profile, and strong government support, hyperscalers are envisioned to help propel our economic growth even further. Darren Hawkins, the CEO of Space DC, was quoted in an article saying that the Philippines ranks second in terms of data center growth in Southeast Asia. With only 47 megawatts of available capacity in the country, it is a dramatically underserved market, and therefore potential is very high. We are excited to be a first mover in a new market where we see our customers, are investing heavily in. MNL1 is Space DC's third hyperscale campus and largest to date, on the heels of JAK1 in Indonesia and NCR1 in India. Likewise, the Philippine automotive industry is already integrated with major global value chains. We have a fairly extensive auto supply chain comprising of over 380 parts manufacturers, Coupled with the strength of our die and mold, electronics, and the IT BPM sectors, we can respond quickly to the changes in a fast-moving market. In relation to this, we have developing EV, or electric vehicle industry. The Philippine EV ecosystem is composed of 54 manufacturers and importers and still growing. The industry has generated 71,000 direct and indirect employment. We are positioning the Philippines as a regional manufacturing hub for EV and EV parts in ASEAN. We recognize that the future of transportation will be autonomous, connected, electric, and shared. Again, this is one sector we want to develop and give our full support in terms of incentives. And I'll be now leading to what we call a sector, a special sector. We call this the green metals. And for instance, I'm referring to copper, to nickel, and cobalt. With regards to the country's copper industry, the Philippines is home to an estimated 1.1 billion metric ton of copper reserves, reputed to be among the highest in the world, and it fuels the global copper industry. The industry also employs 14,000 Filipinos and has an estimated value of $2 billion of annual copper product exports. But more than just raw material exporting, we want to establish a downstream copper industry in the Philippines. So we envision a fully integrated Philippine copper industry, one that involves more processing of this green metal. On a side note, we would like to point out that the increasing demand of this green metal being boosted by the copper's role in the rapidly growing industrial sectors like the EV, batteries, electric vehicle batteries, and semiconductor wiring, as well as in broadening our economic recovery efforts. Moreover, the Philippines is also one of the major sources of nickel worldwide. It ranked 6th in nickel reserves and 2nd in nickel production. The country has nickel reserves amounting to 2 billion metric ton, and the country's nickel industry employs 9,905 Filipinos in nickel mines and processing plants. Next, the country's aerospace industry is likewise something to be considered. The Philippines continues to be recognized in the global aerospace industry as a developing player in the industry value chain and employing around 6,000 Filipinos. The industry has capabilities in aerospace parts manufacturing, such as the flight control, actuation systems, oxygen systems, aircraft maintenance, repair and overhaul, or the MRO, and aviation and aerospace engineering trainings. So I've talked about the reforms. We strongly express our desire to cultivate and strengthen partnership with our neighboring countries and partner countries. We are proud to say the Filipinos represent also the youngest workforce, a workforce of about 49 million Filipinos, of course, under the administration of Secretary Bello here, and among the five, also the youngest among the 5 founding members of ASEAN, because our median age is 25.7 years old, so 25 years old. And comparing it to Indonesia of 29 years old, Malaysia almost 29, and Singapore 42 years old, Thailand 38 years old. As our country navigates the fast-changing world amidst the pandemic, we are confident that the Philippines remains as a premium investment destination among our neighboring countries. This is proven by our sizable markets, now about 110 million Filipinos. And as the economy grows, you can see and have more Filipinos with income, with disposable income, and a growing consumer base. And out of that 110 million Filipinos, we have a 49 million workforce. And our strategic trade management regime is also being considered by many investors. Our ideal location to link Asian and Southeast Asian value chains and the key markets. Also the wide network of the FTAs that we mentioned. And lastly, our proven track record in terms of the trajectory and the direction of economic reforms across administrations. As we look forward to discussing our business, we encourage you to get in touch with our commercial office in Dubai. Sham Yalong is here. Okay, don't hesitate to approach her later. Okay, And of course, our embassy, headed here by Conjen Dueñas. Our Board of Investment, Governor Angie also is here, Governor Angie Cayas. By the way, she was the lady who started the IT BPM sector in the year 2000, when we were all still very young. No. And we invite you all to look at the Philippines more closely as a valuable contributor to your global business growth and as a partner in rebuilding, knowing that the Philippines can definitely complement UAE's strength. In closing, while the pandemic remains to be very challenging, we are already seeing signs of recovery, with some indicators even already exceeding pre-pandemic 2019 levels. The administration of President Rodrigo Roa Duterte is determined to pursue till the end of the administration the necessary major reforms that will further strengthen the country's economic foundation in line with market-based principles, ease in doing business, and performance-based support. And I must say that these basic market principles will be pursued even by the next administration. As we hear out the several platforms that they have been pronouncing, this new administration, incoming administration, will definitely pursue all these vital economic reforms. Philippines will remain to be a very market-based, rules-based country that investors can have comfort in investing in. We shall continue to liberalize and open our economies, ease foreign equity restrictions moving forward. And as we do so, we will create more jobs and employment for the Filipino people, which will give them a better and more comfortable quality of life. Again, so maraming salamat po, shukran, and thank you. Mabuhay po tayong lahat.
Thank you very much, Secretary Ramon Lopez, for that very insightful and in-depth analysis and presentation about the Philippine economy, which will complement the growth that you're seeing here in the UAE. What a wonderful news, actually, for the investors here in the room. I mean, the trajectories are great. Like, we first beat the expectations in 2021, and by 2022, we're going to be surpassing the 2019 growth. That's a pre-pandemic levels. At the same time, it's congratulations to the leadership for, again, surpassing the FDI levels for 2021, considering that it's higher than the pre-pandemic levels. And to sustain this great momentum, we're very happy to hear from the presentation that we're seeing a lot of economic reforms, from the liberalization of many trade sectors, as well as the tax incentives and tax environment, which is getting more attractive in the Philippines right now. Definitely, and lastly, just like Dubai, the Philippines, or the UAE, the Philippines is also a very strategic location for growth, for expansion for our investors in the room. Now, energy, infrastructure, and agriculture comprise three of the Philippines' biggest avenues of investment opportunities, with a budgetary allocation amounting to a massive 790 billion pesos, or 56 billion dirhams, according to the approved budget for 2022. To help us explore these sectors, we will have the Philippines ministers for the aforementioned sectors share us the projects, initiatives, and programs that will open up possible areas of collaboration. Our first speaker is the sole Filipino who led a global agricultural research institute, the International Crops Research Institute for the Semi-Arid Tropics, which was instrumental in quadrupling investments from 2021 million US dollars to 2014's 85 million US dollars. Wow, that's a 4 times increase. Helping millions of farmers in India, where the institute is based, as well as other dryland countries, including the Philippines and Africa. Our speaker today, with several decades of agricultural management and not 1, but not 2, not 3, but 8 doctorate degrees, the multi-awarded and internationally recognized public servant continues his mission to contribute to the growth of Philippines' agricultural landscape and helping Filipino workers in the grassroots level, the farmers and the fisher folk, to prosper. Ladies and gentlemen, my pleasure to welcome the Philippines Minister of Agriculture, Secretary Dr. William Da.
Maraming salamat po, fellow members of the Cabinet, Excellencies, distinguished guests and participants, ladies and gentlemen, good morning. I'm pleased to be here today to discuss investment opportunities in my country's agriculture sector. This is an honor for which I'm deeply grateful. The Philippine government is proud of its record in agricultural development, showing its resiliency amid of two pandemics. This is COVID-19 and the African swine fever. But the record is not something to stand on. It is something to build on. Let me discuss the foundations we have prepared for investors from all parts of the world and with UAE today. First, a word on the state of Philippine agriculture. It stands proud on the cusp of transformation. During the administration of President Rodrigo Roa Duterte, the Philippine Department of Agriculture has embarked on a reform agenda, a pivot to the four pillars of farm consolidation for increased economies of scale, modernization, industrialization, and professionalization of our sizable farm workforce and human capital. It is an agriculture sector with a compass for agri-entrepreneurship. The government supports this expansive view following 18 key strategies to diffuse the necessary inputs and ingredients of profitable enterprise to our farmers and fishers who we want to groom as players in the global economy. Now, I would like to highlight digital agriculture because of the very importance given of UAE, for example. The Philippine agriculture sector employs 43% of the national workforce and regularly claims 46% of the food and beverage produced by the Philippine manufacturing sector. Right now, the Filipino people consume much of the processed food produced in the country, and we will be open to really producing more and exporting also as much. The Philippine crop subsector is in full flight, contributing nearly 60% of agricultural gross value added and growing a full 2.6% in the last quarter of 2021, despite the trail of natural disasters that visited the country. This growth is bannered by major crops such as sugarcane, pineapple, banana, coconut, and mango. Poultry and fisheries production also registered positive growth rates of 2.7% and 1.4% in the previous quarter, thanks to our support for aquaculture technologies, for fisheries, and technologies in egg production for poultry. Now, to invest in the Philippine archipelago, we have vast resources of untapped natural resources, and year after year, our commitment of public funds for environmental programs continue to grow. We have a skilled labor force, abundant sources of raw materials for manufacturing and processing, and a government that supports investors with favorable national policies and incentives. The sector's transformation is also a triumph of massive crop and product diversification, including that of the other subsectors. Hence, I present to you the other areas where I hope you can join Philippine agriculture in its flight. Our coconut farmers are among the best in Southeast Asia, leading the world in the export of coconut products. Some 3.6 million hectares of our nation's farmlands are devoted to the coconut industry, and we now have globally competitive processing technologies to power our production and exports with high-quality products. Filipino farmers produce almost 740,000 tons of mango a year. The sweet taste and superb succulent texture of Philippine Carabao mangoes are known the world over. The world's best tasting fruit is a largely untapped product with promising export and investment opportunities in cold storage facilities and research. The Philippines was the second largest exporter of fresh pineapples in 2020, but there is ample room for investments in the production of more planting materials, post-harvest facilities, and processing technologies. Overall, the potential value of our pineapple exports can reach as high as $881 million US. At the moment, the value of our pineapple exports stands at $307 million US. The Philippine banana sector is the second largest exporter of Cavendish bananas in the world, exporting nearly 1.6 billion worth of the fruit last year alone. We can double that value with adequate investments in research and development. Our waters are also home to an astonishing abundance of wildlife, including tuna. In fact, there is a wealth of investment opportunities in the sustainable management of tuna in the Philippines, as well as the construction of post-harvest and processing facilities for our marine fisheries. The Filipino tuna industry presently exports tuna to the United Kingdom, Germany, and Japan. The Philippines ranks second in the world in terms of the value of seaweeds. This is mostly because of supportive government policies and rich natural resources. Seaweed production in the Philippines is a simple endeavor, requiring little in the way of technology. This means big returns on even the smallest investments. We exported around $99 million worth of crabs and crab products to the US, Japan, Germany, and China last year. We can earn you much more with sufficient investments for infrastructure and packaging technologies. The pandemic has allowed us a time for new beginnings, a time for exploration and discovery. We sought to make our own backyard a thriving hub of agri-industrialization, supporting the produce of farmers and directly marketing this to consolidation and processing centers, readying our local produce for markets, both domestic and international. To this end, President Rodrigo Rua Duterte has established agri-industrial areas linked to production centers in the entire archipelago, of course, with the Department of Agriculture leading. This covers all the country's best business opportunities, from modern agribusiness to sustainable fisheries. These agri-industrial business corridors are the fruit of policies and public investments that support agriculture and fisheries, the desire to incubate the most promising ventures and form partnership with other actors in the economy. There are promising investment opportunities in infrastructure and technology in the new Clark City and nascent economic zone. In Taguig City, in Metro Manila, government policy will earn URIT's returns for processing facilities for bottom mushrooms and seafoods like tilapia, milkfish, among others. And in the Soc-Sargen region in Mindanao, in southern Philippines, there are excellent opportunities for the processing and packaging of an abundance of farm and fishery products, facilities for key commodity areas. We are also making good progress with the establishment of what we call SAFE, Stimulating Agriculture and Fisheries Enterprises Innovation Hubs. In Region 1 or in the Ilocos region, in northern Philippines, we are expanding into renewable energy and solar irrigation. We are tapping into the role of agritourism as a value-adding and sustainable feature of the sector. Our policies allow investors excellent returns for food packaging and warehouses in Region 3 in Central Luzon. This region is our veritable rice basket and supplier of the Filipinos' favorite vegetables in Metro Manila markets. Other regions have also other safe innovation hubs. The Philippine government opens doors to public-private enterprises. To this end, we have 3 priority areas for partnership. This is under development: the Integrated Dairy Project, the Integrated Liberica Project, this is coffee, and the International Wholesale Food Market. As you can see, we have every desire to be a big player in the global coffee industry. We also want to endow the regions with international wholesale food markets to give space to our smallholder farmers to have their produce consolidated and sold to major markets with no threat of waste and spoilage. The Integrated Dairy Project, which we have to be signing with a partner from Middle East today, with its deep well of about $500 million US, looks to groom the Philippines into a competitive and vibrant dairy industry, given government resources to develop livestock technologies as well. Milk and dairy products feature prominently in government feeding programs in its campaign to end local hunger and malnutrition. In closing, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, the moment has arrived to harness the vast energies and abundance of the Philippine Islands for the creation of a new business experience, an experience richer and deeper and more truly a reflection of the goodness and grace of the Filipino spirit. Ours is an incredibly exciting time to be in the field of national development and private enterprise in the Philippines. There are great people, like many here today, with long experience and extraordinary commitment in this area. And there are new leaders, a new sense of purpose, new players in private investments. All of this is creating a new sense of possibility and hope. Majority, if not all of these investment areas I have presented to you today are to be part of the reforms that we have in the economic sector of the country, the incentives, tax holidays, and I think Secretary Mon is in the process with other departments finalizing the strategic investments priorities plan, where again, this will encourage incentivization of the various agri-industries and other sectors therein. So we look to your trust, your confidence, and your interest. Come, invest with us. Please join us in the triumphs of a transformed Philippine agriculture. Thank you, and God bless us all.
Thank you very much, Secretary Dar, for the very insightful talk. The agricultural sector in the Philippines is very, very vibrant today. 3 trivia to keep us awake. Okay, so according to the Guinness Book of Records, did you know that the sweetest variety of mango is called, it was presented earlier, Carabao variety. And the Carabao variety is also known as the Philippine mango. So the sweetest mango in the world is found in the Philippines. Secondly, about another presentation, another thing that was mentioned earlier is a coconut. This miracle drink and fruit that's, nothing is wasted in this one. In terms of market growth, it has been growing by 8% CAGR year on year until 2027. Something to look forward to for our investors in here. Did you know that one of the major players in coconut is Pepsi? Okay. And last trivia. Who is the second largest exporter of bananas in the world? Philippines, okay. So, but this and more, lots of things to do business in the Philippines, and we look forward to hearing more from our speakers. Again, I'm Dr. Karen Remo, and I am your host for today. Our next speaker is the elected representative of the Lone District of Southern Leyte, who gave up his post to take on the reins of the Philippines' ongoing infrastructure developments, otherwise known as the government's Build, Build, Build initiative. As a representative, he penned and co-authored a total of 92 bills in the Congress and is now paving the path, literally and figuratively, for the country to witness the completion of no less than 17 mega infrastructure projects for 2022. Please join us on stage, Philippines de facto Minister for Public Works and Highways, Acting Secretary Roger Mercado.
Our head of the Philippine delegation to the city of Dubai, His Excellency Ramon Lopez, His Excellency Hassan al-Hashiri, fellow ministers, members of the Parliament, our friends here in the United Arab Emirates, ladies and gentlemen, good morning. The Philippine government is strengthening the Build program to revitalize the economy from the COVID-19 pandemic. Infrastructure and construction industry have the greatest impact among all other sectors of the economy because it is the only sector with quadruple effects on the economy. The Build, Build, Build program of the President Rodrigo Roa Duterte administration delivered its promise for our country to experience the biggest and boldest infrastructure investment program no other president has achieved. As the country's engineering and construction arm, the Department of Public Works and Highways implemented more than half of the Philippine government's infrastructure spending. The actual disbursements made by the department increased by 209% from Philippine to 820 billion disbursements from 2011 to 2015 to Philippine 2.5 trillion from 2016 to 2022. Also, the DPWH was able to generate 9 million jobs from 2016 to 2021. And this year, we target to generate additional 2 million jobs. And just yesterday, this was confirmed by our economic arm, the National Economic Development Authority. In 2021, DPWH was able to disburse a total amount of 668 billion pesos, which is 31% or 158 billion pesos higher than the 10 billion, 510 billion pesos disbursement in 2020. The Department of Public Works and Highways is doing its part towards the attainment of the ambition natin 2040 goal of our President. Matatag, maginhawa, at panatag na buhay. Meaning to say, strongly rooted, comfortable, and secure life. We are also trying to encourage our people that in order to achieve our goal, we will begin to have the malasakit, pagbabago, and patuloy na pag-unlad. We are now encouraging our people to have a heart to care for other people, to change our ways, to be at par with other countries, and our programs to be sustainable. We are poised to achieve our goal of an empowered and competitive nation. The Highway First policy focuses on building well-planned, sustainable, resilient, and integrated national road network that will decongest and avoid over-concentration of socio-economic activities in highly urbanized areas and promote rural development. Construction of bridges and maintenance of existing highways will be prioritized to ensure safe and reliable transport system. It also focuses in making highways clean and green by planting trees and building more bike lanes and pedestrian infrastructures. Lastly, the citizens' engagement is being encouraged in the project identification. We have consultations with all the stakeholders, more especially our political leaders. Prioritization and monitoring to make sure that the projects are properly implemented and completed on time. The following are the key DPWH strategic infrastructure programs guided by the Highway First policy. Traffic decongestion program focuses on the improvement and expansion of the national road network by building more bypasses, diversion roads, high-standard highways, and expressways. Integrated and seamless transport system aims to enhance inter-island connectivity through the construction of short and long-span bridges. It also involves improvement of the logistics infrastructure network in Mindanao and develop a transport system that have significant impact on tourism, agriculture, and industrial sectors. Given the country's inevitable vulnerability to geological hazards, we are continuously implementing various programs that will make communities livable, sustainable, and resilient. We are intensifying our efforts to combat disaster risks through our flood mitigation projects, bridge seismic improvement products, as well as construction of evacuation centers. The Philippines is one of the geographically located countries vulnerable to natural calamities and hazards, experiencing an average of about 20 typhoons every year. Under the flood control program, the department will complete the updating of the flood control and drainage master plans and feasibility studies of the 18 major river basins and other critical principal rivers, including cities and urban areas that are highly vulnerable to flooding situations. The Flood Management Master Plan for Metro Manila and surrounding areas was formulated to serve as the roadmap of the government in addressing flooding in Metro Manila and surrounding areas. There are 11 recommended structural mitigation measures with a total estimated cost of 352 billion. It involves the construction of river channel improvement, construction of pumping stations, and dam construction. In order to optimize our water resources, we are prioritizing the construction of retarding basins, water impounding projects. One good example is the flood risk management project in Imus River. A total of 13,224 flood control projects were completed from 2016 to December 2021. Those are the inter-island linkage mega bridge program that will provide linkages among the various islands of the country through the construction of short and long-span bridges. We are building bridges that will connect Panglao to Tagbilaran City, Tawi-Tawi bridges, Bataan-Cavite interlinked bridges, Cebu-Mactan Bridge, Pangil Bay Bridge, Samal Island, Davao City Connector, Panay, Guimaras, Negros Island Bridge. The Metro Manila Logistics Improvement Program involves the construction of new bridges crossing Pasig River, Marikina River, and Mangahan Floodway. This will provide alternative linkages between major thoroughfares and increase the number of usable roadways that would decongest traffic in EDSA and other major roads in Metro Manila. We already completed the Bonifacio Global Center, Ortigas Center Link Road, and the Estrella Pantaleon Bridge. And to be completed this year is the China grant-funded Binondo Intramuros Bridge. We are also fast-tracking the construction of additional 6 bridges crossing Pasig, Marikina River, and Mangahan Floodway, with a total investment cost of 28 billion pesos. Expanding the country's highways and expressways will give way to regional development and will eventually decongest highly urbanized areas. The Department of Public Works and Highways will build and lay the groundwork for the 1,262 kilometers of new high-standard highways and expressways in Luzon, Cebu, and Davao, with a total estimated investment cost of 819 billion pesos. One of the country's projects that is our priority under this program is the Davao City Bypass Construction Project, which involves the construction of the country's longest mountain tunnel. One of the game-changing projects of the Department of Public Works and Highways is the Luzon-Spine Expressway Network Program. A total of 1,101 kilometers of high-standard expressway and highways in Luzon are targeted to be implemented, which is more than twice the 382 kilometers of existing expressways in 2016. Once these projects are completed, the travel time from Ilocos to Bicol will be reduced from 20 hours to 9 hours. Thank you. We already completed the final selection of the 89-kilometer Tarlac-Pangasinan-La Union Expressway, or triplex. The east and west lateral connectivity is also being improved through the construction of Central Luzon Link Expressway. The completion of the Metro Manila Skyway Stage 3 has reduced travel time from Buendia to Balintawak from 2 hours to 15 to 20 minutes. We will continue to prioritize road network expansion projects, including bridges that support socio-economic development. Also, fast-track the implementation of the government's reconstruction, recovery, and development plan on conflict-affected areas to promote peace and security and inclusive growth. Peace is the key to progress and development. One of the government's COVID-19 response is the construction of mega communities, isolation facilities, off-site dormitories, modular hospitals. As of January 2022, the Department of Public Works and Highways has completed 823 facilities with 30,314 bed capacities. These are only some of the department's priority, His Excellency, in infrastructure flagship projects that usher in the Philippines' golden age of infrastructure. And we need your continued support in pursuing other pipeline projects, sir. that involves technical expertise in the field of design and construction of highly complex projects such as road tunneling, inter-island long-span bridges, dam construction, flood control projects, and elevated highways. To one and all, the Philippines will progress. It's just a matter of time. And we hope that you will ride with us, come to the Philippines, and be our partners for progress. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for that very, very lively presentation, Secretary Roger Mercado. It was very insightful to know that travel time can now be decreased from 20 hours to 9 hours, among others. UNCTAD's recent data has shown that FDI flows have actually touched $1.6 trillion in 2021. That's 77% increase versus 2020. That's even higher than that's higher than the pre-pandemic levels. There's so much anticipation and appetite to finance and invest on infrastructure, and why not? Seeing the effect of like reduced mobility, reduced travel time means higher productivity, higher economic growth, and higher profit for the businesses in this room. So again, thank you very much, Secretary Mercado, for showcasing some of the Philippines' most iconic projects and presenting the future of the Philippines' infrastructure developments. Our next speaker for this series has over 4 decades of private and government leadership experience under his belt, revealing the age, known for his vision to attain energy security for the country, exploring a wide array of resources, from traditional to renewable resources. To date, we have nearly 900 renewable energy projects ready for commercial use, nearly half of which are hydropower, banking on the Philippines as an archipelagic nation. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome the Philippines Minister of Energy, Secretary Alfonso Cusi. Okay. We will now proceed to the next speaker. So we have a video.
A pleasant afternoon to everyone. At the onset, allow me to thank the organization of the Philippines Country Business Briefing on the occasion of the Dubai Expo 2020 for giving the DOE this opportunity to present the prospects in the Philippine energy sector. The presentation will cover 3 major points. First, we will take a quick glance at the 2020 energy situation to see where we stand right now. The 2040 energy outlook will follow to give a better picture for our long-term energy goals. The last part will expound on the various strategies of the DOE, highlighting the plans and programs, opportunities for collaboration, and the corresponding investment requirements. The pie chart shows the 2020 total primary energy supply, or TPES, with a level that reached 56.4 million tons of oil equivalent. In this period, the impact of the COVID-19 has already been taken into account, as energy level reduced by around 6% from the 2019 level due to the slowdown of the country's economic activities as the government implemented quarantine measures during the period. The 2020 account shows an increase in indigenous energy share to 52.6% from previous years. The total final energy consumption, or TFEC, by sector shows that only the household sector indicated an uptrend level of consumption, and consistently for 2020, household is the most energy-intensive sector at 31%, share of the total energy consumption of 32.4 million tons of oil equivalent. This can be attributed to the stay-at-home measures during the pandemic. On energy consumption per fuel, oil reduced its utilization by 13.2% from 2019 to 2020, as this is almost consumed in the transport sector. Electricity and biomass consumption, although reduced by 4.4% and 3.5% respectively, their shares to the demand mix are still considered significant at a level of 20 to 22% during the period. The biggest reductions in energy consumption were from coal and natural gas consumption for non-power application due to restrictions on industrial operations, particularly for oil refinery and cement manufacturing. In 2020, the country's total power generating capacity reached 26,286 megawatts, while dependable capacity was 23,410 megawatts. Coal-fired power plants as well as renewable-based power plants remain a significant part of the country's overall supply. More than half, or 57.2%, or 58,176 gigawatt hours of the country's total power generation in 2020 was supplied by coal. This was followed by renewables at 21.2% and natural gas at 19.2%. The total primary energy supply, or TPES, under the reference scenario will reach 155.6 million tons of oil equivalent by 2040 at a rate of around 5.2% per year. For the clean energy scenario, the TPES registers at 144.8 million tons of oil equivalent. In the clean energy scenario, some volume of coal and oil will be displaced due to alternative fuels for transport, highly efficient coal technologies, and intensified utilization of RE sources, particularly geothermal energy and combined solar and wind, and natural gas for power generation for the next 2 decades. The country is projected to increase its energy consumption in response to the economic trajectory until 2040. Under the reference scenario, TFEC increases at an average of 5.8% annually from its 2020 level of 32.4 million tons of oil equivalent to 99.3 million tons of oil equivalent in 2040. Transport and industry will account for the bulk of energy demand between 2020 and 2040 and register the fastest growth rate by around 7%, followed by the services and agriculture sectors. Energy demand on a per-fuel basis under the reference scenario will consistently be dominated by petroleum products from 2020 to 2040, which accounts for a share of around 57% of the demand mix by 2040. Electricity will also contribute significantly at around 26% share. The reference scenario depicts natural gas as the dominant provider of electricity. In the clean energy scenario, renewable energy displaces coal and natural gas with a share of 50% in the generation mix by 2040. In this slide, we can see the breakdown of the additional capacity requirement by 2040. The capacity requirement coming from RE increases from 45.6 gigawatts in reference scenario to 73.9 gigawatts in the clean energy scenario. The increased requirement from RE will largely be driven by solar, hydro, and wind. For the upstream sector, we are keen on expanding the indigenous energy reserve and production of petroleum and coal. While we issued a moratorium on coal power plants, Coal and oil are considered as vital energy resources in the country's quest for energy supply security. The DOE is encouraging hybridization of conventional energy plants to balance its effect on the environment. For the downstream oil industry, we are looking at the possible establishment of a strategic petroleum reserve, which will help the country in times of oil volatility in pricing and supply. We are also banking on having a world-class, investment-driven, and efficient natural gas industry. We see that natural gas is the fuel of the future, and we are optimistic that the facilities being put up in the country right now will help us attain energy security. The DOE will also implement the National Renewable Energy Program 2020 to 2040 to increase the 1% renewable portfolio standards to meet the aspirational target of 35% and 50% share in the total power generation mix by 2030 and 2040 respectively. Continuous implementation of relevant policies under the Philippines Renewable Energy Law will also be carried out. For example, renewable portfolio standard for both grid and off-grid areas, enhanced net metering program, the Green Energy Auction Program, the Green Energy Option Program, and the Renewable Energy Market. The DOE also established the competitive RE zones in the Philippines to DC 2018-09 to 0027. This undertaking was able to identify 25 strategic areas in the Philippines with the highest concentration of wind and solar resources. For solar PV, a total of 15,944 megawatts of potential capacity were identified based on the initial results of the study. Similarly, the same strategic areas have wind potentials of about 18,692 megawatts. Another priority for the RE industry is offshore wind energy. Currently, the DOE is actively working with the World Bank in formulating an offshore wind roadmap to lay down the general framework for future offshore wind development. Our goal for the power sector is to establish a flexible and interconnected smart grid for all the areas in the Philippines, so we can have an optimized energy system across the different island grids across the country. This is part of our commitment to ensure 100% electrification for all households in the country, so that no one will be left behind. We have been implementing energy conservation practices for a long time as the government's energy policy-making arm, but it is a feat to mainstream efficient utilization of energy across all sectors. Aside from the use of programs like energy labeling, energy performance standards, and rating systems, we are pushing for a digitized energy consumption monitoring and evaluation process, as well as the development of green infrastructure, investments, and incentives. The deployment of applicable alternative fuels and emerging technologies for transport will provide communities access to cleaner and efficient technologies for cleaner air and environment, new jobs, and healthier living conditions. Current undertakings include electric and hybrid EVs and hydrogen fuel cells, and we are open to other emerging technologies. The potential for utilizing cleaner energy sources such as nuclear and hydrogen is also being explored and studied. The issuance of a special order in 2020 created a committee which conducted a study on the impact of hydrogen in the country's energy mix. Partnerships with Star Scientific Limited of Australia and Tokyo-based Hydrogen Technology Inc. of Japan were also pursued. Accordingly, the sector is also looking at the possible use of small modular reactors for power generation. These SMRs will be a suitable fit as a supply option given the country's geographical setting. The plans we have set for the countries will enable it to have energy necessary for strongly rooted, comfortable, and secured life for the Filipinos. Our future, as envisioned in the sector, has all the key components achieved: energy security, sustainable energy, resilient infrastructure, competitive energy sector, smart homes and cities, and empowered consumers. Investments are key in driving the industry. Under the clean energy scenario of the PEP, the total investment over the outlook period is US dollars 150 billion. The power sector accounts for a majority of the total capital requirements with a share of 80%, followed by the upstream 15% and downstream 5%. Of the USD billion 115.3 that is needed for the construction of new power plants, the required investments in RE alone totals US dollars 94.3 billion. This ends my presentation. Thank you very much for your kind attention. Mabuhay po tayong lahat.
It's Secretary Cusi presenting the landscape of energy in the Philippines. That's Yusek Posadas. Sorry for that. Thank you. There's no better place to actually talk about clean energy but the UAE today, for 3 reasons. Did you know that the UAE is one of the largest investors in clean energy because the leadership believes in the future that is clean and sustainable? By 2050, it's expected that the UAE would have invested $163 billion in clean energy. Number 2, the UAE recently announced that it's going to be net zero in terms of emission by 2050. And also recently announced, the UAE will be hosting the COP28 International Climate Conference here in Dubai by next year. So best place to actually gather together to get the investments on clean energy started. Thanks. Apart from this sector, which is the energy, we will now be talking about the stock market in the Philippines. To help us get a deep dive into these numbers, we have a seasoned expert to lead us in this conversation. After serving as an independent director of the Philippine Stock Exchange from 2015 to 2017, he has helped the system to transition its trading engine to a more robust platform, and he has since led the country's stock market platform in its path to a high growth trajectory. By the way, the Philippine Stock Exchange won a major award this year for this. Let us all welcome the Philippine Stock Exchange President and Chief Executive Officer, Ramon Monzon. Will be online.
Hi, good morning. Thank you for inviting me to participate in today's country business briefing for CEOs of key companies in the United Arab Emirates and Middle East, and government representatives with business interests in the Philippines. Today, I will be presenting a snapshot of the current investment landscape in the Philippines, including opportunities in the Philippine capital markets and equity investments. The first part of my presentation will cover how the Philippine economy and the stock market are doing as the country recovers from the COVID-19 pandemic. I will then touch on the investment opportunities in the Philippine Stock Exchange going forward. Let's take a look at the Philippine investment landscape. Based on the GDP rates of select ASEAN countries for 2020 and 2021, we can see that the ASEAN 6 has turned around their economies from the bottoms they hit in 2020. The Philippines in particular recorded a 5.6% GDP growth rate for the full year 2021, a dramatic turnaround from the 9.6% contraction of her economy in 2020. This slide shows the GDP forecast for the ASEAN 6 by the World Bank, International Monetary Fund, and Asian Development Bank. Vietnam, Malaysia, and Indonesia are expected to grow in the 5 to 6% range, while Singapore and Thailand are expected to have a slower growth in the 3 to 4% range. The Philippine economy, on the other hand, is expected to grow 5.9 to 6.3%, supported by sustained public investment and recovery of household consumption. The PSE index closed at 7502.48 points on February 9, 2022. This is up 5.3% from year-end 2021 closing of 7122.63. It is up 62.3% from its lowest close of 4623.42 on March 19, 2020. However, it is still 7.2% below the all-time high of 9058.62 points, reached in January 2018. As we look at the other key indicators, there is more evidence of the stock market recovery. Foreign investors used to comprise 55.4% of the market's trading volume in 2019. This went down to 45.4% in 2020 and went down further to 36.1% in 2021. Yet, despite the exit of foreign investors, average daily trading volume at PSE increased by 22.5% year-on-year from 7.35 billion to 9 billion in 2021. Local investors clearly took up the slack left by the exit of the foreign investors. What's even more noteworthy, though, is the fact that even with the increased trading volume, the share by local retail investors increased from 18.2% in 2019 to 26.9% in 2020, and further increased to 31.1% in 2021. A strong retail participation in the market is very healthy and positive sign for any exchange. Capital raising at the PSE for 2021 reached a record amount of 234.48 billion, breaking the previous high of 228.3 billion raised in 2012. Compared to 2020, capital raised in 2021 was 126% higher. A total of 8 IPOs, 11 follow-on offerings, 4 stock right offerings, and 8 private placements were conducted in 2021, including the 55.9 billion IPO of Monde Nissin Corporation, a global food and beverages company, which was the biggest IPO ever in the history of the exchange. After the snapshot of the current investment landscape in the Philippines, let us now proceed to the investment opportunities in the equities market for the coming year. We can see on this slide that different investment houses are projecting the PSE index to hit anywhere from 8,010 to 9,000 points. These projections are based on expected earnings growth of PSE index companies, a rebound in consumer and business sentiment as the economy continues to reopen, and inflation falling within the government target rate. The listing pipeline at the PSE for 2022 continues to remain robust. The last time the PSE had an IPO listing in the first month of the year was in 2003, almost 20 years ago. And yet, for January 2022, the PSE has already had 2 IPO listings. So we hope this is an indication that capital raising activities at the PSE this year will match and hopefully exceed last year's. A real estate investment trust, or REIT, gives the investor exposure to the real estate market. With REITs, investors who are not able to afford a direct investment in real estate may invest in these large assets in bite-sized chunks. Half of PSE's IPOs in 2021 was comprised of REITs, as they continue to attract a lot of investors because of their high dividend yields. In addition to their high dividend yields, the stock prices of all but one of the REITs that have listed at the PSE have gone up, giving investors an additional return in the form of capital appreciation. 65 of the 278 listed stocks at the PSE are Sharia-compliant securities. PSE contracted the services of Ideal Ratings, an entity that screens companies based on standards set by the Accounting and Auditing Organization for Islamic Financial Institutions. As of the end of 2021, the 65 Sharia-compliant stocks had a market capitalization of 2.23 trillion pesos, or 15.3% of the market cap of all listed companies. The PSE also offers dollar-denominated securities, or DDS, which are listed, traded, and settled in US dollars. DDS is an alternative investment instrument for investors with US dollar deposits who do not wish to have any currency risk exposures. At present, there are 4 dollar-denominated stocks which offer an average dividend yield of 6.3%. Finally, the PSE listing rules allow for dual listing for foreign companies, provided they are already listed in their home markets. There are currently 2 Canada-listed insurance companies and 1 Singapore food and beverage company that are likewise listed at the Philippine Stock Exchange. At this point, I will be presenting new products that PSE expects to launch this year. We will be launching 2 new indices this first quarter to supplement our benchmark index, the PSEI. The new indices are Dividend Yield Index and Mid-Cap Index. These indices should generate additional liquidity for non-PSEI stocks and give investors more investing options. The PSE also hopes to get the long-awaited regulatory approval for PSE to make short selling available on the exchange. Having short selling in place would encourage foreign investors to return to the Philippine equities market, since they will now be able to hedge their investments here. More important, this would pave the way for the introduction of derivatives in our market. Another new product the PSE is awaiting regulatory approval for is the preferred shares only listing. There are many infrastructure companies who are not yet ready or willing to offer common shares to the public because their full income earning potential is not yet in place. This new product will give infrastructure companies flexibility in their fundraising structure that is best suited to their business operations and strategies. These are the key takeaways from my presentation. Economic recovery from the pandemic has started to take off with the reopening of businesses and markets in most countries, including the ASEAN countries. The Philippines in particular is poised to return to its pre-pandemic GDP growth rate, which in turn creates many opportunities in the Philippine equity markets. Strong corporate earnings and new and diverse product offerings by PSE have given investors confidence to invest their funds in the stock market as the market returns to its pre-pandemic growth trajectory. Again, thank you for inviting me to this country briefing. and we look forward to your participation in the Philippine equities market soon.
That was Ramon Manzon, the president of Philippine Stock Exchange, who recently has been awarded, the Philippine Stock Exchange has been recently awarded as Southeast Asia's best stock exchange. If you would see, it had grown by 144% from 2019 to 2021. The equities and the financial markets in the Philippines are really, really buoyant. Just to give an example as well, recently named as the world's best central bank chief is also from the Philippines. So you are in safe hands when you invest in the Philippines. Our next speaker is no stranger to the UAE. He has consistently visited the UAE every year, save for the pandemic year, to check up on the labor conditions of, you know what, nearly 1 million Filipinos here in the UAE, since he took the reins of the Philippines Labor Department. Having served multiple posts in the government for the past 3 decades, he has a complete grasp of labor conditions, regulations, and manpower required for both local and overseas employment. Today, he will share insights on how the Philippines could support international businesses planning to set up operations across various sectors in the country through talent availability. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome on stage Philippines Minister for Labor and Employment, Secretary Sylvester Bello III.
Thank you very much, Karen, for those not so accurate but kind words of introduction. Salamat po. His Excellency Hassan Al-Hashimi, good day, sir. My partner, permanent partner in the cabinet, Secretary Mon Lopez. You know, I always look at him as the personification of economy and work, business. So I always make it a point to support him, because when we have good economy and good business, we are assured of good employment. I would like to greet also the youngest in the Duterte cabinet, Secretary Mercado. Until now, I don't know why he decided to become a cabinet secretary when all his life he has been a congressman. Very effective congressman, especially in getting projects for his district. Of course, we have my Manong Secretary Dar of the Department of Agriculture. I'd like to greet the representatives from Congress. Of course, the very pretty congressman from Iloilo, Congresswoman Jam Baronda. And then the Honorable Congressman from Pangasinan, Congressman Christopher De Venecia. Yan. Saan yung isa pang congressman dyan? Umalis na. I will not greet him anymore. Batiin ko rin po yung mga kasamahan ko sa government service. Hindi ko na lang kayo isayin kasi mapahaba ang aking speech. And I always make it a point not to deliver not more than 5 minutes. Otherwise, everybody will stop listening to me. But having said that, after listening to Secretary Lopez, I find it very redundant, in fact irrelevant, to talk some more about labor in order to attract foreign investment. Because while Secretary Lopez was speaking about Philippine economy, I saw His Excellency nodding his head this way, a manifestation of his commitment to bring more investment in our country. Anyway, I have to read, to give justice to my speechwriter, to read his message. But before I do that, ladies and gentlemen, I would like to greet all of you. Good morning. And as I said earlier, it may no longer be relevant for me to be talking about the labor front in our country, because the message alone of Secretary Lopez is a very sufficient, concrete position to encourage foreign investment in our country. But there is one thing that you should never fail to consider in inviting and attracting foreign investment in our country. You may have the best business, the best agricultural industry. You may have the best energy situation in our country. But if there is no industrial peace, you cannot expect foreign investors. And that, ladies and gentlemen, to my mind, is the biggest achievement of His Excellency President Rodrigo Roa Duterte. It is undeniable that the Philippines today is enjoying industrial peace. And that's the reason why we are feeling the entry of foreign investment. So, as I said, I just have to give you a point on what the labor front is in our country. First, let me thank the United Arab Emirates and the Middle East region at large, who have been partners in the Philippines in trade and commerce. We also appreciate your ceaseless support and enduring contributions to the growth and progress in our region, Your Excellency. We are seeing the easing of COVID-19 now, leading to the reopening of the Philippine economy as vaccination rollout is coming in and expedited, resulting in diminution of diminution of infection rates. And this resulted in a significant improvement in the country's employment indicators compared to the previous year. Based on preliminary annual estimates of the 2021 labor force survey conducted by the Philippine Statistics Authority, around 4.6 million jobs were generated in year 2021 from 39.4 million in 2020 to 44 million in 2021. In year 2021, we observed a total of 75.2 million working population belonging to the 15-year-old level. Of this number, 63.4% or 47.7 million are active members of the labor force, and 92.2% or 44 million were employed, while 7.8 or 3.7 million were unemployed. Ladies and gentlemen, our department operates and maintains the PESO Employment Information System, which is a labor market information system with a nationwide database for active manpower supply and employers. It provides us a picture of the qualifications and skills of job seekers and job vacancies in the country. In 2021, a total of 1.6 million job seekers were registered in the system. Our labor force is a largely youthful one, with the highest number of registrants belonging to the age group of 25 to 34, and followed by age group of 20 to 24 at 24%, and age group of 35 to 44 at 17%. High school graduates account for the largest number of registrants at 38.3%, followed by college graduate at 17.7%. To construct a comprehensive national competency profile of the Philippine workforce, our department conducted the Philippine Talent Map Initiative, which took stock of the skills and competencies of more than 100,000 individuals from various schools and partner establishments nationwide. This initiative identified the top competencies of the Filipino workforce, such as English functional skill, math functional skill, workplace ethics, multitasking, and English comprehension. In the area of employment of foreign nationals, please take note. In the area of employment of foreign nationals in the country, in the recent years, we have embraced a policy and regulatory reforms, rules and regulations that spell out a reunified policy on the administration of foreign workers engaging in employment and in the country were issued and liberalized. We have simplified the process of securing work permits for foreigners, as well as granting exclusion, and exemption in many, many cases. Certificate of exclusion is granted to foreign nationals providing or supplying services such as members of the governing board, intra-corporate transferee, and contractual service suppliers. This, of course, is in keeping with our commitment in various free trade agreements. Meanwhile, foreign nationals granted exemptions, which include those engaged in innovative startup businesses, as well as those granted an exemption in the economic zone. It's always there. Gentlemen, ladies, may this information be useful, especially our foreign friends, to inspire you to consider the strong possibilities and the promising outlook of our country's talent profile and business-friendly regulatory environment. With that, ladies and gentlemen, I thank you for listening to a redundant presentation, which I earlier said. But I know with the presentation of my co-workers in government, we are expecting His Excellency Al-Hassan to start investing if you have not invested yet. So thank you very much and good day to everybody.
Thank you very much, Secretary Bello. Secretary Bello has been very, very accommodating to interviews for the Filipino people here, especially with the Filipino Times. Thank you very much, Secretary Bello. The Filipinos are indeed known for the tender, loving care, or TLC, whether at work or at home. And that is something that investors can look forward to when they invest in the Philippines. It was indeed an insightful morning. From different sectors, we've heard insights, we've heard a lot of investment opportunities and partnership collaborations that we can explore after this meeting. We can together, between the UAE and the Philippines, grow through trade and investments. Now, before we end this morning session, a very important person will be speaking in front of us to be able to give us the closing remarks. We'd like to invite His Excellency Hassan Al-Hashmi, Vice President for International Relations of the Dubai Chamber of Commerce and Industry, for our closing remarks.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Good afternoon, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen. It is an absolute pleasure to be given this opportunity to address this high-profile gathering of our beloved Filipino community, and the fact that today, on this blessed day of Friday, we are also celebrating the Filipino National Day at the Expo 2020. So congratulations to this wonderful community. And I assure you this is a celebration of not just the Filipino community, but also the United Arab Emirates. Historically, and more so evidently today, we are seeing more and more integration of this wonderful community within the United Arab Emirates and certainly within Dubai. Every step of the way that we go and cross, whether it is at business levels, cultural levels, or across multiple levels, we are always welcomed by the TLC that you've mentioned from this wonderful people of the Philippines. And we are truly humbled by the kindness and by the support this community has given to the United Arab Emirates, to the city of Dubai, and to the progress of this region through the United Arab Emirates and through the city of Dubai. So thank you all very much. I am the last speaker, so it's very difficult to keep you engaged as much as possible. I do not have people that wrote for me my speeches, Your Excellency. I'm not as passionate as you are when you address the gathering, Your Excellency, but I can tell you what comes from the heart reaches the heart. Recently, last year, Dubai Chamber, which represents a large number of businesses in Dubai, close to 300,000 members, organized the first Global Business Forum series for the ASEAN region. And we were very humbled and very honored to receive you, Your Excellency, at the Global Business Forum ASEAN. The words and the support that we have seen from your government to really take forward these numbers that we have witnessed today across all of these different sectors is a testament to your vision, to what you want to achieve, to where the Filipino population is going to reach, and how we collectively, through this partnership, can really make that change and create prosperity for all. You were also kind enough, Your Excellency, to take us through a special tour to your beautiful pavilion, an absolutely beautiful pavilion. We have truly, truly enjoyed. Thank you. No, we should be thanking you because everything was explained. It covers the heritage. We've seen the artistic side of things. We've seen the potential of businesses. And this requires a lot of work and a lot of effort. And these efforts, despite the conditions that we are in today globally, I can assure you it did not go to waste. And the message is very strong. And everybody heard of your messages globally at the Expo 2020. I had to say a few words to thank you all, and I really wish you a great stay in the United Arab Emirates and in Dubai, and congratulations once again on your happy National Day. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, His Excellency Hassan Al-Hashmi, for that very heartful and heartfelt message. Truly, what speaketh from the heart reaches the heart. At this juncture, would like to invite on stage DTI Undersecretary Ireneo Vismonte to facilitate the signing of the Memoranda of Understanding and Letter of Intent between the Philippines and the UAE.
Marhaba. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. The Department of Trade and Industry of the Republic of the Philippines takes pride for having its Secretary of Trade and Industry, Ramon M. Lopez, together with the other members of the Cabinet, Secretary of Labor and Employment, Silvestre Bello, Secretary of Agriculture, Dr. William Dar, Secretary of Public Works and Highways, Mr. Roger Mercado, and members of our House of Representatives, Representative Tof De Venecia and Representative Jam Baronda, as witnesses in today's presentation of business agreements by Middle Eastern companies. This event is a fitting testament to the relations between our countries growing from strength to strength and the aspiration we both share towards the inclusive growth and collective prosperity in the community of nations. So we invite you in front to join us as witnesses to this signing of agreements, or as witnesses to this exchange of business agreements. First, I wish to invite HealthMart LLC, represented by its managing partner, Mr. Muwafaq Matari, to the center. Sir. HealthMart LLC intends to explore the opportunities in the Philippines on medical equipment trading, healthcare facility, and healthcare and medical business process outsourcing centers. We appreciate your valuable contribution to the healthcare sector of the Philippines. We request the secretaries to stay. Right. Thank you, sir. I now wish to invite Leisure Consultants, or EM Consultants, represented by its partner and head of design, Mr. Shahid Mirza, to the center. Sir. Leisure Consultants, or EM Consultants, intends to develop and operate the Fantasy World property located in Lemery, Batangas. The 30-hectare Fantasy World will feature condotel, clubhouse, amusement park, eco-resort, golf course, adventure and aqua park, local farmers market, chalet and villas, among others. We laud Leisure Consultants and EM Consultants for these economic contributions to the Philippine tourism development. Thank you, Mr. Mirza. Okay. May I welcome Abu Dhabi Future Energy Company, PJSC Masdar, represented by Manager for Business Development in Asia Pacific, Mr. Sinda Nath, to join the cabinet members, the secretary in front. Masdar intends to explore opportunities in the Philippines in relation to developing and investing in projects related to renewable energy, green hydrogen, and sustainability. Masdar intends to enter into separate undertakings with prospective local partners in the specific activities it will pursue with the aim of to invest and create employment opportunities in the Philippines for the next 3 years. Masdar targets to achieve 2 gigawatts of renewable energy in the Philippines within the specific period. Thank you, and we wish Mr. Masdar's continued success in these ventures. Thank you, sir. I now invite Agriculture's Secretary to lead, and Mr. Aidan Tainan, member of the Board of Directors of Baladna QPSC, in front. Through a tripartite agreement, Baladna aims to establish a large-scale, fully integrated dairy business with the goal of improving the self-sufficiency in dairy industry of the Philippines, in particular, the milk processing industry. We thank Baladna for serving a booming domestic demand and indisputable proof of strong and growing economy. Thank you, sirs, and excellencies, thank you very much. Thank you, sir. Ooh. Okay, no more.
All right, we would like to call on the following esteemed guests to join on stage for a group photo opportunity. May we call on Mr. Muwafaq Matari of, this is all, Muwafaq Matari on Health Mart, Mr. Aidan Tainan of Baladna, Mr. Siddharth Nath of Abu Dhabi Future Energy Company, Masdar, and Mr. Shahid Mirza, and Mr. John Ellis of EM Consultants and Leisure Consultants for a group photo. Sige po. Yes. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Group 1. We'll now proceed to Group number 2. We would like to call on the following members of the House of Representatives of the Philippines who are present with us today to join the esteemed guests for a group photo. May we call on Congresswoman Julian Baronda, Congressman Christopher De Venecia, Congressman Stella and Miro Kimbo, and Congressman Wesley Gatchalian to come up on stage for a group photo. Thank you so much, Group 2. Ah, okay. Thank you, everyone, for your time today. We'd like to take this opportunity to invite everyone to the ongoing day-long Philippine National Day celebrations at the Expo 2020 Dubai. We would like to acknowledge the presence of Her Excellency Jocelyn Ambassador Quintana.
Here, this one. Special Envoy and Personal Representative of the Philippine President.
We also would like to acknowledge the presence of Special Envoy and Personal Representative of the Philippine President, Robert Borge. Who do I invite? Everyone? Who do I invite? Okay. We would like to invite Her Excellency Ambassador Jocelyn Quintana on stage for photo op with the cabinet members of the Philippines. We would like to invite Her Excellency Ambassador Jocelyn Quintana on stage together with the cabinet members of the Philippines for photo op. I'd like to ask everyone to kind of vacate the space so we can take photos on stage. Okay, so all eyes on the camera. So this time po, the ambassador with the cabinet members. We would like to invite everyone for lunch. Thank you so much. Ay, sir, can I change cards? We would like to invite the PESA delegation on stage. You have cards, please? Yes. So your name is? Robert. Oh my God, sorry, so much names today. What is your name? I don't know. What's your number? Ah, okay. I just know I'm special. What's your number? 0917. Very good to meet you. Of course. Are you going to be here until when? I will be here until the 30th. Oh, okay. So we'll message you on Viber. Thank you.